letter to Anne Frank. When the E key goes out, the only thing you can be thankful for is that you're not E. E. Cummings. And yes, I do plan to read this book. They tell me it's great, but they say the foreword could use a little work. Kinky Friedman, April 7th, 2017, somewhere in Texas. Chapter 1. Growing Up in the Lone Star State. I was born in Chicago, lived there a year, and couldn't find work. So I moved to Texas, where I haven't worked since. Kinky Friedman. When Richard "Kinky" Summit Friedman was born on November 1st, 1944, in Chicago, Illinois, Adolf Hitler had been systematically murdering Jews for 3 years. President Franklin D. Roosevelt was on his way to an unprecedented fourth term, and World War II continued to rage. Anne Frank, the 13-year-old girl who put a face on the Jews annihilated in the Holocaust, had written the final entry to the diary of a young girl, and would die 4 months later in the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp. It was a nerve-wracking time for Kinky's parents, as well as other young couples torn apart by the war. His mother, Minnie Summit Friedman, was living with her family to wait out the war. Commissioned as an officer, Kinky's father, S. Thomas Friedman, was in the heat of battle, piloting a B-24 Liberator bomber with the 8th Air Force based in England. Considered to be the greatest air armada in history, the mighty 8th had a history of turning young women into widows. Nearly one-half of the U.S. Army Air Force's World War II casualties, including more than 26,000 deaths, occurred to young men in that military unit. Tom fought in the 565th Squadron of the 389th Bomb Group of the 2nd Air Division. Well aware of his chances of returning to his pregnant wife and unborn child, Tom remembered the first words of his commanding officer. The CO told them to look at the man on their left and look at the man on their right, Kinky wrote in an essay about his father. When you return, he'd said, they will not be here. The couple met at the Jewish People's Institute, a local Jewish community center that offered community theater. Minnie, who later lectured on Shakespeare, was a creative spirit with dreams of being an actress. Although those dreams were discouraged by a teacher who told her acting was not a proper profession for a Jewess, her love for the stage was passed down to her firstborn son. The couple married on July 26, 1940, when Tom worked as a psychologist at the Vocational Guidance Agency of Chicago. As first-generation Americans, the daughter of Russian immigrants and the son of Polish immigrants, the young couple listened to the news in horror as Nazi Germany continued its quest for world domination. The threat escalated with the invasions of Poland, where most of Tom's relatives lived, and the Soviet Union, where Minnie's father had been a target of Hitler's regime for helping fellow Russians immigrate to the U.S. Unwilling to sit back while Hitler continued his rampage that eventually killed 6 million Jews, including 90% of Poland's Jewish population, Tom had enlisted for flight training in the United States Army Air Force. The couple lived at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio until he was deployed overseas. It was a difficult time for the young wife, who also had 2 brothers serving overseas. She'd been forced to leave her own home in military housing to live with her parents and to go through her pregnancy with contact limited to an occasional letter. Her heartfelt, emotional letter telling Tom he was the proud father of a son didn't reach him for nearly a week. At 23, Tom